Hey, thanks for joining me once again on the Do Whatever podcast. Man, it's been a month. It has been one of those months where everybody and everything seems to be in flux and changing, and it's all positive change. That's good. I think the biggest thing that's driven me to get on the microphone, put another episode in the bank, is that all three of my kids right now are changing. They're reaching transition points in their life. They're entering new phases, and you can see it. Not just in when they're going to school or new places that they're going, new hobbies they're taking, new skills they're getting. You can see it in them. You can see the transitions, the changes, the maturity, and that's always an interesting and enjoyable point for parents because we have to recalibrate where we are as parents and as people. And I think in any healthy relationship and any healthy family, I think it's right that the parents or guardians have those moments where they realize things are changing, people are changing, the overall chemistry, the calculus here is growing, evolving. So let's take a quick check of what we're doing. Let's look at fundamentally, how are we parenting? How are we relating to each other and the children at the same time? Families are a complex relationship, and it isn't as simple as living in mud huts and hunting and gathering anymore, where we're all constantly working. We have survival jobs to do. There's time to think about these sort of things. There are distractions, and there's an entire world of things out there that require things of our children emotionally, intellectually, physically, that really, really complicate and muddy the picture of how they relate at home. Home isn't their only life. They have a life with their friends. They have a life at school. They have a life with coaches and other adults. And that's a lot to balance, and that's a lot to think about psychologically. So I think Ashley and I have definitely taken some time to sit down and assess where we are parenting-wise, make sure we're doing a lot of the right things, make sure we're taking the right approach, and make sure that if an approach needs to change because one isn't working, we don't want to bang our heads against the wall for too long. And so it's definitely been one of those months. And added to that, there's been a ton of cool stuff going on. Just this last week, Matt was in town. We were doing Hate Brand Goods work. We just had the Arnold Sports Festival at the end of last month, and that kind of kicked off a bunch of craziness. And then kind of transitioning into building spring lines. And we went down to Onnit to, Matt was going to podcast with Aubrey Marcus. So we went down, we trained at Onnit, kind of hung out there for the day. It was really cool. Matt and I don't really get a chance to work out very much together. I think it's only happened now. This is only the second time in all the time we've known each other, just because we live in separate places. He works out at home. Generally, so do I. And me being in Round Rock, him being in Baton Rouge, that's obviously, we don't intertwine our training very much, but it was fun. It was fun to share a rack and, share a barbell and just kind of talk. Work gets intertwined with personal, and it really made for a good step forward for us because we're talking a lot about growth. We're talking a lot about, just how I was talking about with the kids, talking about the dynamics are changing, and who we are as a company. We always have to. There's a thread that we have to maintain. That's us. That's our identity. But at the same time, as relationships, dynamics, markets change, we have to learn to be flexible and really sit down and take a look at ourselves. And, for one, take a look in the mirror, each of us, but also ask the other business partner to give me a clear assessment of where I am on this, or how am I doing with this? What would you like to see more from me? So there's definitely a lot of parallels there. When I used to play music, I really made the point that being in a band is like being in a relationship. It really is, for us guys, there's a lot of parallels to having a girlfriend or having a family at the time. And there's all those things to manage. There's all those expectations and all those external relationships that affect the internal dynamics of a band or a family. So I think a lot of that I'm finding holds true with a company as well. It's very difficult when you own a business, when you are operating a business and you are invested in it, literally and metaphorically, you're invested in it, that it's very hard to separate your personality out from it. I've had corporate jobs, I've had jobs, the standard office or travel jobs, things like that. And it's much easier to divide yourself out of it and kind of create boundaries. But with this kind of ownership type or entrepreneurial type job, I hate overusing that word so much, it really is hard to divest yourself, your true self from it. And I don't think you need to. I think that's what I'm discovering, that, you need to let some of those boundaries slip once in a while, because often what people are looking for is your story and who you really are. And that needs to express itself, especially in something like a lifestyle brand. And that is about as good a time as any to start talking about our sponsors. The Do Whatever podcast, as always, is sponsored by Hate Brand Goods. Hate Brand Goods is a lifestyle brand that is based on a very simple philosophy: turn negativity into positive results. Everyone has doubts. Everyone worries about just how much they're going to accomplish. Don't hide from that. Let that stuff drive you. Find adventure, chase strength, build something. Whatever you choose to do, whatever it is, put your whole self into it. Enjoy yourself in the process. Always party. The process is everything. Now, Hate Brand Goods primarily makes apparel. We do sell ebooks, we sell some training equipment, some fun identity stuff, some accessories and things like that. But the heart and soul is apparel. And in doing that, we are basically asking people, if you are into this message, you're into this philosophy, this way of looking at the world, if you look to this same lens, you can wear that message on your body. And we take that pretty seriously. So we start every creative process starts with a basic idea. Is this something we would want for ourselves? Would I wear it? If the answer is yes, then we obsess over getting it right so we can share it with you. If it's something that you are going to wear that is an expression of something, of a shared philosophy that you have with us, then we are going to take it seriously. So head to Hate Brand Goods at thehate.com, HVIII.com. You're going to use code DOWHATEVER. I'm ordering you. I'm telling you. You're going to use code DOWHATEVER to get 20% off for your first purchase at thehate.com. We actually have a mystery shirt promotion coming up. So this is one of the upsides and downsides, I guess. Upsides for you, maybe just not as big an upside for us, but it actually is, because we get to clear some stuff out. When you have a warehouse full of stuff, eventually, returns, exchanges, just the hustle and bustle, things get left behind. Like random stuff gets left behind. Sometimes this stuff, it gets pulled up out of boxes. We're like, whoa, that's killer. I didn't know we had that one of those shirts still, or 3 of those shirts still. So instead of just throwing them back up for sale and, bringing something back from the dead, we just do a mystery shirt option. No matter what the cost of that shirt was, no matter what the style or, all that kind of stuff, like we just throw it into a big bin. We throw one price on it and we put it up as a mystery shirt. You guys get to buy it at a super, super deep discount. And then you get the surprise of opening the package. There you go. Like best way to get just a random Hate Brand Goods shirt and end up with a good deal on a Hate Brand Goods shirt, and it helps us clean out our warehouse, make more room to make more awesome new stuff. So head to thehate.com. This episode is also brought to you by Throwbros. Throwbros.com. It is the only online store for throwers for Highland Games athletes. They got everything you need to get geared up for the season. They got tape. They got tacky. The famous, I like to think that it's famous, but the famous or infamous or notorious, we can go with any of those. Toss and Sauce tacky. That is the best tacky on the market. I'm sorry, I know I'm biased because I'm involved with the company, but I've used lots of different tacky. I've used spray tacky and everything else, and that is the best stuff for throwing in the Highland Games that there is, plain and simple. Best delivery method in the squeeze bottle. It's all I would use. Same principle as always. Like, would I use this? Yeah, then that's what we're gonna give out to you. So head to throwbros.com. You will find the tacky there. You'll find everything you need to get geared up. Tape, tacky, chalk. They have hammer blades. We have a resource section with ebooks, hard copies and ebooks from all the best Highland Games throwers out there that'll help you get on track, whether you're a new athlete or whether you're an experienced athlete looking to up your game a little bit. If you use code DOWHATEVER there, you're also going to get 20% off your first purchase. And big news, coming in the next 2 weeks, maybe less, we're going to be launching implements. So you can launch implements, right? See what I did there? We're going to be putting weight for distance and weight for height implements on the site. So throwing weights of every official weight that you have throughout all the classes, we're going to be offering those. So those will be hitting the website very soon. We've got a placeholder up there now if you want to get a sneak peek. But check out social media. Go to @throwbros on Instagram, and you're going to see, you'll start seeing pictures leaked out of that stuff. But it's going to be awesome. We know one of the biggest struggles people have is finding implements wherever they are in the country. We found a way to make it work to get those made and get those shipped to you. So in the next couple weeks, keep an eye on throwbros.com and keep an eye on the Throwbros Instagram account, and you're going to see lots of announcements coming about that. My family lives in the suburbs. I grew up in the suburbs. My wife grew up in the suburbs. And thanks to this pedigree, we believe that we were pretty much prepared for anything suburban life could throw at us. So we have definitely navigated noisy neighbors, barking dogs, block party politics, authoritarian homeowners associations, drag racing teenagers. We were now bona fide adults. So there's nothing this tame place full of bike paths, community pools, and charming, stately street names can throw at us that we can't handle with ease or just shrug off as first world problems. We work hard. We work hard to be good citizens, and more importantly, we work hard to make our children good citizens. We want them to be confident, capable, and kind. We know that not everyone shares those same values. Even if they do, they might teach them to their children a little differently. The one promise that the suburbs are supposed to keep is that for the most part, the people around you are interested in being part of a community. After all, there are cheaper and more convenient ways to live for working adults. These little boxes are arranged just so, because in some small way, we sort of do want to all be the same. That way, it's easier to let your kids play outside until the street lights come on, because there are better odds that the people they meet will be as kind to them as you are. My older brother is the greatest natural athlete I've ever known. I've had the good fortune to meet, train, and compete with people that are superhumanly strong, fast, and agile. I have spent hours talking with athletes and coaches who, through decades of experience, understand the mental aspect of competition at a level beyond any psychologist or neuroscientist. None of them were as natural as Matt, though. My brother wasn't an intimidating figure or a mountain of a man by any stretch. At the height of his playing days, he was maybe 230 pounds at 6 feet 2 inches tall. He wasn't a speedster. He never clocked a sprint time worthy of note. He wasn't a stats and film geek. He always knew the scouting report on the hitters he was facing, but he didn't let it dictate how he would pitch to them. Matt was a gamer. I suppose, like nowadays, he'd be called a baller. He played every sport you were supposed to play when you grew up in Texas. Football, baseball, basketball, football, and baseball. He also played football. He dabbled in martial arts during college, nearly earning his black belt, going undefeated in every tournament he entered. He bowls in his downtime nowadays and regularly dominates leagues. I never played a sport with Matt where he looked uncomfortable. He had an uncanny mind-body connection, and to this day, still amazes me. But Matt's calling was baseball. As he neared the final year of high school, he was faced with a decision that many talented young men have to navigate: baseball or football. He was being recruited by college programs for both. He enjoyed football and was the school's starting varsity quarterback almost by default, just because of his physical gifts. He had also developed into a ferocious starting pitcher and was known around the state for being a lefty with a fastball in excess of 90 miles per hour. And this is in the days before every high schooler of note had a fastball over 90 miles per hour. And this is a lefty doing that. In the end, he accepted a full scholarship to the University of Houston to pitch. Fast forward to the Phillies selecting him in the 7th round of the 1994 draft, a meteoric rise to the minor leagues, and 3 years as a starter in the majors. I would say he chose well. I also played sports growing up. I played baseball. In fact, I even pitched. You can probably guess how things panned out for me because you're not listening to a podcast about my exploits at the major league level. I was mediocre at best. I had no passion for the game. I languished in JV until I quit prematurely and then started back up again, but it was always to follow other interests and stuff like that. Do I regret it at times? Sure. Looking back, I'm sure I could have put in the extra work and forged myself into a Division II player. The thing is, my life today is the sum of that decision, along with millions of others. Overall, that one choice is pretty insignificant in the great scheme. What actually matters is that I'm happy with the person I've become, and that I have the respect and love of my friends and family. That, and it was the right decision. I sucked at baseball. Think of your earliest memories of your father. If he wasn't around, think about a man that played a central role in your childhood. What comes to mind when you think of him? How would you describe him? So in doing research for this podcast, I asked a lot of other men these questions, and not surprisingly, there were some common threads. The overwhelming majority of men spoke about the physicality of their fathers, or even their lack thereof. Sure, plenty of them talked about their fathers' personalities, their careers, or even their financial status. By far the most common subject was their father's physical presence and his strength. Children see their fathers do things that seem superhuman. While most dads can't even come close to the feats of strength we see in World's Strongest Man competitions, that kind of context is non-existent to children. Dad strength is a product of the huge disparity between the strength of an adult and that of children. I want to focus on that point in order to bring some perspective. Being a strong and capable man is about more than impressing your kids with your strength. Even the weakest adult can do that to an extent. It's important to be strong, powerful, and physically impressive. However, the effect that those traits will have on who you are as a man will have an exponentially greater effect on the lives of your children. Maybe most important of all is the process of becoming strong, powerful, physically impressive. Ask any good athlete, and they will preach tirelessly about the transformative effect of becoming. Accomplishing your goals is a wonderful thing, but becoming the person capable of reaching them is what defines you. Maybe I just could have said, it's about the journey, not the destination. Sounds like something a dad would say, right? I don't want my children to look at my accomplishments, or anyone else's for that matter, and just focus on how great it feels to accomplish a goal or be at the top. I don't want them to only focus on victory or being better than their opponents and peers. I want them to have the patience and clarity of mind to understand how working to become has changed them. Lao Tzu said, "He who gains a victory over other men is strong, but he who gains a victory over himself is all-powerful." Strong and capable people value victory highly, but not above all else. There is no rival that will be as persistent as the one in the mirror. Someone who understands that will also understand that their successes and failures in seeking victory rely in large part on their own thoughts and actions, not fate, luck, or other people. In 1954, the social psychologist Julian Rotter developed a concept known as locus of control. Simply put, locus of control refers to the extent to which individuals believe that they can control events that affect them. An external locus of control means you are likely to assign responsibility for events that affect you to other people or forces. An internal locus means that you tend to take responsibility for them. In my experience, everyone believes they have an internal locus of control. A key component to becoming strong and capable is to figure out if you actually do. And once you are fully awakened to how responsible you are for where you are and what happens to you, the next step should be obvious. What can you do about it? There are innumerable advantages to being physically strong. Men and women alike have sought, envied, and admired strength all throughout history. There was once a time before automobiles, computers, grocery stores, and air conditioning that a man's physical prowess was the key characteristic that ensured not only his own survival, but those of his family as well. While a lot of what we're talking about praises the social and psychological benefits that strength confers on men and their offspring, it's important to remember that strength is very often the quality of humans that keeps them alive and breathing. As our species, our ingenuity and social development are undoubtedly the keys to our outrageous success on this planet. In the day-to-day lives of ancient human beings, though, the ability to act upon that ingenuity, to forge the physical world to your will, is what helps successful people become a lot of people's ancestors. Mark Ripito says, strong people are harder to kill than weak people, and more useful in general. And Mark said a lot of things. But that's one of the better ones in my opinion. The world is relatively safer than it used to be. For the industrialized world, the threat of predators or death at the hands of a rival tribe is so minimal as to be insignificant. Some people might take the assertion that brute physical strength is no longer a necessity, but instead of vanity. And those same people probably couldn't pull someone from a burning car wreck. Now, on the surface, the world around us is more convenient and safe. It's easy to get lulled into a false sense of security and forget that the visceral, raw, and ruthless nature of it all lies just barely under the surface. It's when things go sideways that we see flashes of how the world really is. Car accidents, building collapses, fires, natural disasters, terrorism, violence. These are the type of things that pierce the veil of comfort and safety we've built as a modern society. Not so coincidentally, these are quite often the situations that call on our mastery of the physical world, or, more simply, our strength to see us through and ensure our survival. We might even find ourselves relying on the strength of others. In any such unlikely circumstance, you should consider it your personal responsibility to either be strong enough to save yourself or strong enough to protect the well-being of others. There's a reason heroes are drawn with broad shoulders and muscles. Saving the world and rescuing people in need is commonplace for the heroes in our comic books, movies, television shows. But here in reality, you and I probably aren't going to see that kind of action too often. Some people may never have a moment in their life where their life is in danger or they have to save someone else's. This is the blessing of a developed modern society. We have created jobs like soldier, paramedic, police officer, firefighter who see life or death situations regularly so we don't have to. This is what our strong and capable ancestors wanted for us with each successive generation. Human beings want a better life for their children and grandchildren. Viewed this way, the industrialized world in which we currently live with cutting-edge healthcare, social contracts, built-in protections is precisely what we have worked for as a species. In many parts of the world, it's commonplace to earn a living with a job that has essentially zero risk to life and limb. Take a moment to appreciate how novel and amazing that is in the context of human history. All of this has made us, as mentioned previously, outrageously successful. There are billions of us. As such, the more dramatic life or death implications of physical strength aren't as common now. There are still countless applications for it in day-to-day life, though. You probably won't save many lives by carrying bags of mulch, moving furniture without hired help, or throwing your children like spider monkeys across the swimming pool. You will be more useful, independent, and fun to be around, though. For the modern dad, the seemingly mundane applications of strength will probably have the greatest impact on the lives of your children. It's your consistent ability to do what seems impossible to them, moving heavy things, carrying them to bed, that will put an indelible mark on their memories of you and what it means to be a strong, capable man. With no need for long lectures on the subjects, they will grow up striving to become what you modeled for them. With luck, they will seek out those same qualities in other people with whom they share their lives. In the world of strength and conditioning, there is a concept called physical preparedness. This concept is often broken down further into general and specific physical preparedness. So, general physical preparedness, or GPP, is concerned with what you could call the basics of being a human. Standing, walking, getting up, kneeling, sitting, running, jumping, etc. Strength coach Dan John refers to these as the fundamentals of human movement. And training to improve GPP involves becoming better at these. The specific physical preparedness, or SPP, is more concerned with movements that are specific to executing the skills of your sport or activity. So, more simply, SPP is practicing what you intend to perform. When athletes train and build both kinds of preparedness, they're making themselves more capable in their chosen sport. Most of us aren't competitive athletes by any stretch, so we may draw a bit of a blank on what we could build SPP for. That's just fine, because quite honestly, if you prepare yourself generally by being stronger, faster, more agile, more durable, you'll find that your usefulness and ability to perform in most aspects of your life will be vastly improved. You don't need to shoot hundreds of free throws or work on throwing a slider every day because, one, no one's paying you to, and two, the benefits from that are going to be incredibly specific compared to most of what being a human being involves. Instead, work on being able to do the following things with increasing strength, repetition, and overall ease. Pick something up off the floor. Get to and from a seated position. Get to and from a lying position. Jump. Descend to a squat position and stand back up. Push something away from you. Press something over your head. Run. Pull your body up onto something. Throw. For our purposes, a person that is fully capable can do all of these things with a reasonable level of comfort. Even if injury, age, or disability takes some dimensions away, the goal of any person should be to practice and maximize their skill in those that remain. These fundamentals are the very things that make us human in the physical sense. Improving upon our ability to do these tasks by progressively overloading them is what we're doing when we train our bodies. Get better and better at these for as long as you can. And you can quite literally cheat death by slowing the effects of age. Even as you enter the inevitable decline of old age, you can continue to train and fight for your ability to move and interact with the physical world. Even if you lose, and spoiler alert, you eventually will, you will likely do so much later than those who didn't take the time to train their body. Most of you won't set elite lifting totals or break world records. Very few of us will ever earn our living as athletes. We're using training and sport to hold on to these precious functions of our body for as long as humanly possible. A wonderful effect of practicing these skills regularly is that you build a general level of capability. All of a sudden, carrying furniture isn't as arduous. Pick-up basketball games don't leave you gasping for air and vomiting. You can play catch without feeling awkward. Even with no experience in organized sports, you can pick up new lifts and training techniques more quickly. Success builds on success. And as you find greater ease in the activities of living, you'll find that you have more confidence in your body to take on new tasks. Each success will make you less afraid. Each newfound feeling of competence will make you seek out opportunities to feel that way again. You may begin to thirst for competition, by the way. In the time we have, we should find ways to test our strength, conditioning, endurance, and overall fitness in whatever way brings us happiness. The importance of competition for the human body and psyche is a rich enough subject to fill many books, many podcasts, and it already has. But suffice it to say, competition will show you what fundamental part of being a human being you need to most work on. It's pretty often your brain, by the way. There is an invaluable insight about your brain that repeated exposure to competition gives you if you are attuned to it. It's another organ. It's a collection of tissues in the system. Plain and simple. It can be trained, overloaded, overused, underused, and even become tougher and more efficient. I'm not talking about thought patterns either. I'm talking about the structure and the chemistry of the brain. Time and time again, we've been shown that what's known classically as dualism in regards to the mind and body is flawed when you're discussing a real individual developing in an environment. There is no mind that is separate from our body. It's all working together. It's all connected. Our physical presence is part of what makes us human. The fact that our incredibly advanced brain, our mind, still sits within the body of an ape that has to eat, breathe, survive, that's endlessly fascinating and worthy of investigation. To develop yourself as a complete human being, it's important to train the body and the mind. How much one is done at the expense of the other, it's kind of up to you as the user. You'll find, however, that many individuals that we hold in high regard have significant emphasis on both over a lifetime. Look at Teddy Roosevelt. Even in primary education through high school, research has shown that the more well-rounded and athletic children tend to perform better scholastically. The idea of the high-achieving geek that has intellect above all else, that's a misleading rarity. That's a movie trope. That's not real. So one of the things I want to focus on as a father to my children is teaching them that using your body, using your mind, while they feel different, and while in action they may seem different, they're really all part of the same system. They're all part of developing into a human and improving as a human. And you can train those things. You can get better at those things through repetition and exposure to hardship, to competition. That's a pretty important job as a father, is to show them that hardship, that competition, expose them to victory, defeat, heartbreak, and joy, and keep them safe at the same time. You could devote several lifetimes to understanding the chemistry of the human body. We inhabit a beautifully complex machine that is both amazingly durable and frighteningly fragile. In our waking hours, we tend to feel that we're in control of the machine, and the decisions we make are what guides it. This is true in some respect, but as you peel back the layers of conscious thought, you begin to get an inkling of just how involuntary our decisions, behaviors, and reactions really are. Maybe the most influential chemicals in our day-to-day lives are the major neurotransmitters: serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine, acetylcholine, GABA, endorphins. There are also a host of other substances in our blood and tissues that respond without our conscious input to all kinds of different stimulus: testosterone, hemoglobin, adrenaline, etc. The thing we need to realize on our path to strong and capable is that while we may not be in control of how our body reacts to stress and fear, we do have control over how we make that reaction manifest in our actions. The best athletes I know have learned over their years of training to keep these responses from externalizing until they absolutely need or want them to. In a way, they catch them in a holding tank. This holding tank has a pressure release valve. With practice and measured skill, they are able to open up this valve just enough to elicit the physical response they're seeking. Let me illustrate the point with a personal story. When my daughter Hannah was almost 2 years old, she took a nasty spill and split her chin open. In an entirely predictable chain of events, an innocent fun game of get dragged around on a blanket by older brother turned into a bloody mess. I was home alone with both of them, and when she hit the floor with a sickening crack, I got an adrenaline shot like you wouldn't believe. Like, she was screaming in pain. And not only had her chin been badly lacerated, she had bitten both sides of her tongue. Blood was running down my hand as I picked her up. Her brother, 5 years old at the time, was a mess and thought it was his fault, but I quickly got him on track and had him start bringing me paper towels, bandages, and my phone. My boy came through in the clutch. I got to give him that. I was proud of him for keeping it together, even if he had to cry and hug it out after sister's screaming subsided a little. So a quick call to Dr. Mom confirmed that we needed to get to the emergency room to get her patched up. I asked my neighbor to look after the 5-year-old, and into the truck we go. Now, by this time, Hannah was over the initial shock and was back to talking and laughing. I was happy that she was showing no signs of concussion or any other trauma besides the ugly-looking cut on her chin. Still, I felt a twinge of dread the entire drive and the entire time we waited at the hospital. I knew what was coming. This wasn't going to be one of those times when the docs can just glue it shut and hope for the best. This was going to need stitches. Oh yeah, the glue thing. Yeah, they can do that now, by the way. For any new parents listening to this, or any of you who have kids that haven't sliced or busted themselves open yet somehow, allow me to provide you with 2 other insights. First, the slicing and busting of your children's skin is going to happen. Just be ready, dress your kids in red all the time. Second, getting stitches isn't nearly the trial of life it was when we were youngsters. There have been magical advances in how they prepare little ones for stitches. Like, nowadays they have numbing gels, anesthetics, memory wiping drugs, procedural sedation, and maybe most importantly, iPads that show Dora the Explorer on loop. Excelente. Everyone agreed that Hannah needed stitches. In order to do so, the best course of action was to give her a combination of 2 drugs. The first was fentanyl, an anesthetic. The second was Versed, an amnestic drug that would effectively make her forget the whole thing had ever happened. Just the stitching part, not the injury part. So these were supposed to be administered nasally with sprays, so to sidestep the added terror of needles coming at her face. The plan was to have the team of doctor, nurse, iPad holder, and dad work to gently restrain this precious toddler that was, effectively, high on pharmaceutical-grade drugs. It seemed almost too easy. And true to form, the universe came through. The next 15 minutes would provide us a fine display of the universe's infinite power to make anyone look stupid for being confident. The initial prep for the stitching went pretty smoothly, and Dora did her job admirably, but then it was go time. And out came the needle and thread, and as they did, we realized just how foolish we had been to place our faith in a cocktail of drugs that she'd been given. Afterwards, I would learn that Hannah has what is known as a paradoxical reaction to the drugs. This is a charmingly scientific term for a patient who reacts to a drug in the exact opposite way that you expected them to. In Hannah's case, another way of phrasing this is that she freaked the hell out and tried to escape from us like we were a team of alien supervillains trying to remove her face with a hacksaw, a space hacksaw. Just want to keep the continuity there. When your child is this small, it's wise to avoid sedating them whenever possible or practical. Sedation with anesthetic comes with risks. These risks, and the weight against the long-term consequences of a simple chin laceration, make for a pretty quick discussion. In discussing this of my fellow alien supervillains before the toddler's face removal procedure, it was agreed that we would do whatever it took to avoid putting her under in any way, shape, or form. Unfortunately for my heart, whatever it took involved laying my little baby girl on my chest, restraining her entire body while the nurse immobilized her head and the doctors worked to stitch up her beautiful face. Her face was inches from mine in this position. I could hear and feel every breath. I heard her screams louder than anyone else in the room heard them. "Daddy, no! Daddy, no! Night, night!" I could feel her every muscle tense and relax over and over again as she fought to get free. My little girl doesn't lack in physical strength or resolve. I can tell you that with confidence now. Most people would agree that I'm stronger than a toddler. I didn't say everyone would agree. Nevertheless, I was honestly taken aback by just how difficult it was to restrain her. Not just emotionally difficult, but physically as well. At less than 30 pounds of human being was legitimately difficult to hold still for that long. When she perceived danger, her nervous system sent the signal to muster and release massive doses of adrenaline and norepinephrine. Her endocrine system flooded her bloodstream with it, and her tiny muscles used it to maximum benefit. She had a singular purpose: escape. And all of her efforts were focused on it. She didn't care how she looked, how anyone else felt about it, or even that what was happening was for her own good. The totality of her physical being was directed toward that purpose and nothing else, and she gave a 225-pound man a run for his money in the process. In that quarter of an hour, she was superhuman. And when it was all over, I let her loose, and she immediately dove back in my arms. I held her there and kissed her head, rubbed her back, and told her it was going to be all right. And on the bright side, I suppose, the drugs had some of their intended effects after all. Within 10 minutes, I couldn't help but notice that all signs of the emotional trauma were gone. She was curious, chatty, bubbly once again, and was asking when the doctor was coming. The amnestic drugs, the Versed, they really did make her forget that we had all just teamed up and done to her. They wiped that. I wouldn't be so lucky. Everyone left us to gather ourselves and our belongings before the nurse would come back to sign us out. As Hannah and I sat in the relative quiet in the bed together, I felt all of the emotional response I had been holding back start to well up. When your daughter's face depends on you holding steady and not being a big mess of feelings, you shove it down and get on with it. But you can't do that for very long. Those pesky feelings, anger, guilt, doubt, fear, all of them were simultaneously rushing from somewhere in my gut up to the surface of my skin and the back of my mouth. As my little girl sat happily babbling away in my lap, I realized I'd somehow gotten involved in a grip strength contest with a hospital mattress. I twisted that blue vinyl non-allergenic piece of shit for all it was worth. I felt the seams like groan and pop in my hand. In that moment, I must have believed that if I pulled on it hard enough, the mattress would apologize for Hannah's horrible day. Driving home from the hospital, I was still a mess. I was riding a roller coaster of emotions that, unfortunately, I didn't have all the tools to deal with in a healthy way. My wife wouldn't be home for hours still, and I had 2 kids to care for, feed, and get to bed on time. Shove it down. Get on with it. Once Ashley arrived home, we ate together and started to get both kids in bed. After a quick debrief about the day's events, I explained something to her in these exact words. I need to go into the garage and I need a lift. I'm not so much asking you as I'm telling you this is what has to happen. I understood how selfish that sounded, but I also understood that she knew where it was coming from. Her response, okay, honey, I love you. By the time I changed clothes and gotten into the gym, it was almost 9 p.m. This is way past my normal training time, if there is a normal training time anymore. At the time, it was the middle of my Highland Games season, and the goal in the weight room was to maintain speed and athleticism while preventing injury and exhaustion. In other words, like lighter and faster was the current heading. Now, with all of that in mind, I decided to deadlift heavy for as long as I could. Because you see, this particular session had nothing to do with my goals. It had nothing to do with getting stronger. It had nothing to do with Highland Games. This was therapy. 135 pounds. I'm furious that I'm even bothering with this weight, so I don't even lift it. I grabbed 2 more plates. 225. Let's do 10 reps. That's a warm-up if I ever saw one. Yeah, let's feel warm now. 315. 10 more. Sure, whatever. I need this to start hurting. 365. 5 reps. Still no pain. It's time to start doing what we came here to do. 405. I stare at it. Pace back and forth. As I go to put the chalk on my hands, I pause with purpose. I close my eyes. I force my mind and all of my senses to return to earlier that day when Hannah was lying on my chest, screaming. I focus on the guilt. I focus on the fear. I hear her tiny voice crying out for me to help her. I focus on that feeling of helplessness. There it is. That's what I was looking for. My stomach gets weak. I physically shudder at how this affects me. I tense up. I contort my face to rage. Fist clench. I grunt and shout as I stomp to the bar. 5 reps before I take a breath. Belt comes off. It's thrown to the ground as the tears are welling up. 455. My body's awake now. Blood is rushing. Muscles coming online. Senses heighten. I stare. I pace. Again, I stand at the chalkboard and close my eyes. I return to the hospital bed. I feel my daughter on my chest, but she's a little lighter now. I hear her cries again. They aren't quite as loud. Still, I feel the twinge of nausea, the shudder of guilt. I ball it up, and I force it out as I walk once again to the bar. 3 reps. Easy. 485 pounds. My muscles have started to give me the first clue that they're doing work. My nervous system's primed, ready. I rush to get ready, chalk up. I feel a sense of urgency, and I'm desperate to keep the day's experience fresh in my mind. And the weight goes up for a quick double. 505. I walk in a wide circle around the platform. No hint of exhaustion. I'm in no danger of my muscles failing me. When I reach the chalk again, I stare off into the distance. I don't hear Hannah's voice anymore. I just remember that she cried out for me, and I was right there with her. I don't feel any more twinge of guilt. Everything ended up all right. I look into the dirty mirror and I see my face, calm, clear-eyed. I'm remembering the day, but I'm no longer reliving it. There it is. That's what I was looking for. I rack my weights, put away the barbell, and head inside to make sure the noise didn't wake anyone up. If you work long enough at building a stronger and more capable version of yourself, you eventually come to understand the nature of your negative feelings on a much deeper level. Yes, they can be fuel to your fire. You can, as so many athletes do, go to the well of anger, sadness, fear, regret, to fill you with motivation and desire, to stoke the flame. You got to be mindful of the fact that each well is finite. If you draw from it too often, it'll dry up. That isn't always a bad thing, as it turns out. In putting this episode together, I realized there was a theme, a kind of an unintentional theme, and that was welling up of emotion, experiencing emotions as a father, and then trying to regulate those and use them in a positive manner, or at least eliminate or deal with them in a way that wasn't damaging. And I really can't think of a more succinct summary of parenting, the experience of parenting, than that. Is that parenting, being a father, is a constant wellspring of emotion. The little people that you bring into the world can elicit more emotional response from you than anything else, by miles, more than anything else. You're emotionally vested in them in a way that you are like nothing else. And those emotions can sometimes get out of control, and you have to be able to exert some level of mastery over your emotions to be able to use them properly to guide your children forward. And that's a serious challenge. That's the game, especially being a dad. Dads are, notoriously, or I guess when we're generalizing, that, they're going to be seen as the disciplinarians or the hard asses a lot of times. That's not true in every household, but that's a stereotype. And I think a lot of that comes from the fact that as men, we have become more comfortable by the time that we're fathers with dealing with things with a mix of aggression or aloofness. And that combination doesn't often serve you well when you're trying to make a little person into a bigger good person. So that is 100% the challenge. And, if all we were trying to do was keep these kids alive, there are endless examples of this in the animal kingdom, of where just keeping them alive or setting them up with enough tools to stay alive, that happens plenty. There's plenty of examples. But that's not what we're aiming for. That's not what modern humans are aiming for. That's not the game anymore. Yeah, having more offspring that are alive is probably going to help your genes, and in the short run, maybe even in the long run a little bit. But the model for success for us is having a relatively small number of children compared to other species, but investing a lot into them. And you cannot downplay, both anecdotally in your everyday life, societally and biologically, the importance of invested fathers. That you have someone who doesn't pay the cost, biologically speaking, of, carrying a child, delivering a child, feeding a child from their own body, that is investing resources outside their body into the success of that child. That's huge. It doesn't matter if you're rich, if you're poor, if you got a great job, whatever your situation in life is, having just another person, whether, a father, mother, anybody, another person, or aunts, uncles, guardians, grandparents, friends, family, all that, having other people that are providing outside of the physical that a mother can provide is huge. And it's a big reason for that success we talked about, why there are billions of us, is that we spend a lot of our resources growing our youth, growing our children to be better than we were, to improve upon what we've done. We're no longer just scratching by. We're no longer just getting by in the world as a species. What we're doing is we're using the pooled knowledge that we have as a species to share, to pass on, so the next generation can do more. And that requires some pretty sophisticated thinking. And that requires more than just keeping a kid alive. That requires more than just donating sperm as a father. So that's why you're going to have podcasts like this one. That's why you're going to have long thinking sessions. That's why you're going to have an entire industry based on parenting books and, fatherhood, motherhood, and why those things are so important is because we have a bigger goal here. This is a species that's trying to advance on a pool of knowledge and a pool of shared skills and experiences. And those shared experiences, when you really get down to it, that's the name of the game. That's what this all is. People change. People change in every possible way. For goodness sake, your cells regenerate. You don't have all the same collection of cells that you had even a year ago, 5 years ago. Your attitudes change. Your worldview changes. Your station in life changes. Your income, all that stuff changes. Everybody's a different person than they were in the past, constantly. But yet we're all kind of hitched to each other, especially in families. Every person they're just a ship of Theseus. There's no plank in the ship anymore that's the same as the original, but somehow we still identify it by the same name. So what's the common hook? What's holding all that together? It's not the boat. It's the shared experience. It's the shared experience of, did you build the boat together? Did you sail the boat together? Have we helped maintain it together? Did you work on the boat? Have we seen it together? Do we both know the story and do we share it? That's all there really is. That's the only thing that gives weight to relationships over time. Because the body, the ship, that thing changes. And even the mind, even the attitudes that come along with it, those change. So share some experiences. When you get down to it, if you want to be a good father, share your experiences. So once again, I want to thank all of you for sharing this experience with me. This one has been a fun ride. It's definitely been a personal one, and I'm very glad that you guys are along for the journey as always. The particular rabbit holes and the things that I get into, the obsessions, are not always going to be new hobbies, believe it or not. They're not always going to be new skills, new subject matter. Sometimes they're just going to be looking inward. And I thought it was a fascinating look because I know, most people in the world have kids, or plan to, or maybe want to. Obviously, everybody's different. And some people are just curious about the experience of parenthood. And maybe if my perspective can help, even just from a more academic standpoint, even if it's not for you, then maybe this will give you some insight into the people in your life that do have children and are going through these sort of things. But, I think looking inward, that can be just as big an obsession as something to work on and something that you're into, because it fits my personal criteria. It's something that's kept me up thinking about it at night. I've read about it. My wife is much better at reading about parenting than I am, by the way. But I read about it. I watch YouTube videos about it, for goodness sake, and I talk to everybody about it every chance I get. So I knew that right now we were at sort of this. It was a nexus moment, so to speak, where a lot of different factors, including my kids' lives moving forward and Ashley and I continuing to grow as people and so many things happening professionally. I could just tell that this was a thing that was taking up all my time. I want to make sure I'm doing this job well. And that is really all this self-examination from this episode is about that. It's about making sure that I'm doing this as well as I can. Whenever I coach my son's baseball team, every season, we start off with, every practice we try to have a word that we work on by the end, that we're talking about by the end, so that we can work on that word going forward. And always the first word every season is hustle. And anybody that's been coached by anybody ever, you've heard the word hustle a million times. And I ask the boys, I say, what does it mean to hustle? And invariably the first answer, especially from one of the newer players, I don't let the more experienced players answer, is that it means to go fast or, run. And for sure it does. That's what it means a lot of times. But in our environment, hustle means whatever you're doing, do it to the best of your ability. Whatever you're doing in that moment, be the best you can possibly be at it. Put the most effort into it that you can. Show that you are trying with everything and with focus to make that thing happen, whether it's fielding a grounder, whether it's an at-bat, whether it's a pitch, whether it's doing your homework, whether it's cleaning your room, whether it's helping out your little sister. Whatever it is for these young men, do it with hustle. Hustle to do it. Don't half-ass anything. And so I don't think it's unfair that my children, and even the boys that I coach in my family, should ask the same of me. And that's the goal. So thank you once again for joining in. You can find me on Instagram at Beach with 9 E's. There were 8 other people that had that one, the last name as me apparently, so I had to get 9th in line. But yeah, thanks for following the podcast. You can subscribe anywhere that you would normally subscribe: iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play. I'll also put these up on my YouTube channel. You can search for me there, Mike Beach. And I'm happy to have everybody involved and sending questions, sending ideas, asking me to put out a new episode. I can't tell you what that means to me. Just to have an effect on someone out there and to let them in return have an effect on me by saying that they've listened to it and they're interacting and they have ideas, man, that's the cool stuff. So, if you're feeling that way, I would love it if you guys could get on iTunes, write a review about what you think about the podcast, leave a review of any star level. 5 is obviously really the only one that works on my computer. So, you probably have the same. So I would just click the 5 just to be sure. But no, any rating you want to give, I would appreciate it. And you guys out there listening are the best. And we'll have a new episode actually sooner than we had this one, because there have been several in the works, several that are being worked. And we got some cool stuff coming up. I appreciate it, guys. Take care of yourselves.